Anand Juddoo, how it all started for you?
I must say it's been a very long journey. It started when my dad asked me to choose a profession or an academic route, and I wanted to be a doctor. When I actually went through talking to various friends and families, one of them, a high-level government official at that time, informed me that there's a dire lack of quantity surveyors in Mauritius and that I should do it. I did some research and quite liked it. That's when I decided to do quantity surveying and went off to London. So since then I've been qualified as a QS since 1985, and I've been managing my firm since 1987, and up till now I am an established chartered quantity surveyor, and I've also branched out into arbitration and adjudication as well as dispute resolution for construction contracts.
What are your views concerning the development of smart cities in Mauritius? Is it relevant for the country to have several smart cities?
Well, smart cities in itself there's nothing wrong with it. The country is modernizing. We need to have projects which looks towards the future. Smart cities is supposed to be one of those developments which fits all the boxes are tick. But unfortunately, unless and until it is done correctly, we may end up in certain projects not actually living to that expectation. On its own, the development of smart cities is very good indeed. I think it sets certain standards and goals for the future in terms of property development. But how it will work and how it involves the localities where they are situated, that is the main crux of the matter. Otherwise it will end up like a l'éléphant blanc, like we say.
Does Mauritius have what it takes to cater for these types of projects?
I think yes and no. First of all, to build a smart city, you do require a lot of professionals, and those professionals are obviously not available in Mauritius, and you need to actually get some specialists, especially when we talk about LEED certification and so on, because they are supposed to have not use too much electricity, conserve water, and be like a city within a city. If that sort of thing is solved and resolved very early on, I think it can work for Mauritius. But when you look at all those what we call professionals, all those people that are required to work in smart cities, there need to be like an ouverture for Mauritian professionals to work alongside those people. Otherwise, all the other people, all the professionals in Mauritius would not be involved. And that would be a shame, because if we have so many smart cities and we involve only foreign professionals, that might defeat the economic situation of Mauritius, because otherwise a lot of capital would flow overseas. While if you have local involvement, the capital would stay in the country and then develop those firms and individuals who can actually make it count and be like made in Mauritius, something like that.
According to you, what should be the economical and sociological impacts of smart cities in Mauritius?
The impact of smart city, when you think about it, on paper it is supposed to be beneficial economically as well as socially. But when you look at the nitty-gritty of underneath that paper, you would see there is a lot of questions which are unanswered. First of all, the cost of building that smart city. We all know today construction cost is very high, and also not construction cost in itself, but construction cost with all the various add-ons to make that city smart and very efficient and very avant-gardist, as we call it, in terms of development, you might find a problem because it will be very costly. And secondly, the issue here is, of course, only people of overseas would have the means to actually purchase them. Now, in terms of IRS in development, we've seen that there has been quite a very good start, but it's fizzled out because of the cost. So if the smart cities are going to follow the same trend, it might end up like projects not being occupied, or the level of occupancy not being met, and this is going to be a problem in terms of financing. I'm sure a lot of those developers are not going to use their own funds. They would use bank available finance or overseas investors and so on. So this is going to become, this will add in fact to the economic woes of the project if it doesn't work. So what needs to be done is that it needs to be economically integrated within the Mauritian environment. Fine, we can go and look for overseas buyers in terms of the residences and so on, but in terms of office space, this needs to be organically generated within the island. I do not see, just because there's a smart city in the south, for example, you will see a lot of investors jumping on the bandwagon to occupy those spaces. So there needs to be a right balance so that these do not become, where you invest a lot of money and there's no return. And that might be a shame for the country because smart cities are very costly. So socially, I see also there's a problem in terms that it's got to integrate all the population around that smart city. We should not just have, let's say, workers to work in that smart city as gardeners or cleaners and so on. We need to integrate various levels of personnel where people, all the stakeholders within that area, that they are employed in various capacities, not just gardeners or cleaners or maids. So there need to be quite we need to look at the various ways and means of integrating the city or the villages in which it is located, and then integrate them within that development. It's not just a smart city and then you leave on the outskirts of that smart city you see all the various problems that we are having. Now, when we talk about smart cities, we talk about big requirement of power, water, drainage is a big problem because in the light of various flooding that has been happening, and of course power. How are we going to generate all those things, those logistics? And of course the government must bring up a lot of scheme which should be included within that smart city development so as to make sure that things are done properly. For example, when you look at vehicle traffic, there should be, we're talking about Mauritius being a green island. In fact, we should integrate that green island concept within that smart city development, within the internal as well as the external part of that development.
Being among the pioneers here in Mauritius, what are the challenges you faced as a quantity surveyor and how do you get through them?
This is something which has been happened quite a long while ago. I must say, when we started out, there were only a few firms of quantity surveyors in Mauritius, and we were very ambitious and enthusiastic. All the people, in fact, we approached to get work and to obtain developments from them they told us we were too young at that time. And obviously, we did not take these comments to heart. We just persevered with our resolve, and we approached a lot of other firms, and we tendered for a lot of projects as well. And fortunately, with time, these same people who told us that we were not suitable for the project approached us and gave us work that to work for on their project. And in fact, we have had a lot of clients, employers, developments, private developers, public institution, even government as well, who in a span of time, we've done quite a lot of projects, over 300 to 400 projects. And I must say the journey is was very challenging, and is still challenging because things are changing. Technology is playing a big role nowadays. And in fact, what is the main thrust of where we are is the fact that we worked very, very hard, and we actually upheld and to a certain standards which was befitting a chartered quantity surveyor.
You are now a chartered arbitrator. Why and how did this happen?
Again, this is something, when we started out as a chartered quantity surveying firm, we foresaw, as we were dealing with contracts and so on, we foresaw quite a lot of developments in terms of contract interpretation, as well as disputes which were going to arise or arising out of differences between the parties. And of course, both parties being very strong in their resolve and in their understanding, a lot of projects went to arbitration. So at that time, I was working as like an expert witness, helping out the lawyers in terms of the bringing in the technical know-how and the various reports which were required for the arbitrator to understand the dispute. And in fact, this was the first brush with the lawyers, and it just one thing led to another, and we have in fact done quite a number of disputes where we have actually worked together with lawyers and judges, or retired judges as well. And I think I quite like that. And when one thing again led to another, I decided to get involved in the arbitration process itself. So I actually went and did graduate diploma in international arbitration at the University of Singapore many years ago. And I must say now I am, after having done a few arbitration as an arbitrator, I have now become a chartered arbitrator through the Chartered Institute of Arbitration based in the UK. The challenge, of course, is still there, but on a different wavelength. Previously it was quantity surveying, now it is an arbitration, which is much more serious because there's a lot of at stake. There's a lot of stake for both parties, being the employer or the contractor, and as well as you deal with a lot of lawyers who are very good at their work, and there is no room for error, and you must know exactly where you are going, and it is important that you have your head very well screwed on your shoulders, so that you know where you're going, and then of course withstand the exigencies of the work. So that's where we are now. And recently we've been embarking in adjudication. This is another form of alternative dispute resolution, which is like a dispute resolution outside the courts, but involving technical people in the first instance. And of course, if that doesn't work, then it goes to arbitration, and once an arbitration issues his award, that becomes the award itself, which can be upheld by the High Court or the Supreme Court in Mauritius. So this is the steps that we have followed in terms of arbitration and adjudication.
When you look back, how do you feel about those hurdles?
Well, those hurdles were challenges, and I think I am a go-getter. I like to take challenges, and when I do something, I do it well or I don't do it at all. And in fact, since qualifying as an arbitrator, I must say that it's been very challenging, and I quite like this part of the quantity surveying aspects, where a lot of technical and legal aspects are being dealt with, and which has actually spurred me on to set up my own chambers called Juddoo Arbitration and ADR Chambers. So this will be an avenue for me to practice arbitration as well as act as an adjudicator in construction disputes.